Why the Roman Empire really fell. Introduction. The Roman Empire, even thousands of years after its fall, its name still represents power, conquest, and greatness. At its height, Rome controlled lands, stretching from the windswept cliffs of Britain to the scorching deserts of North Africa, and from the Atlantic Ocean to the Middle East. More than 70 million people lived under Roman rule, making it one of the largest and most powerful empires the world had ever seen. Its armies were feared, its roads connected continents, its laws influenced nations for centuries, and its capital became the center of the ancient world. To many people, Rome seemed eternal. No kingdom appeared strong enough to defeat it. No army seemed capable of destroying it. Generation after generation, Romans believed their empire would stand forever. But history tells a very different story. The Roman Empire did not disappear overnight. It was not destroyed in one battle. It did not collapse because of a single emperor, a single invasion, or a single mistake. Instead, Rome slowly began to break apart from within. Political corruption, economic collapse, power struggles, civil wars, and only then came the enemies waiting beyond its borders. The barbarians did not create Rome's fall. They finished what had already begun. So what really happened? How did the greatest empire of the ancient world lose everything it had spent centuries building? To answer that question, we first need to understand what made Rome so extraordinary in the first place. Chapter 1. The Rise of an Unstoppable Empire. Rome did not begin as an empire. According to ancient tradition, it was founded in 753 BC as a small settlement on the banks of the Tiber River in central Italy. Surrounded by stronger neighbors and facing constant threats, few could have imagined that this modest city would one day rule much of the known world. In its early centuries, Rome fought simply to survive. It battled nearby tribes, defended its territory, and gradually expanded its influence across the Italian peninsula. Unlike many kingdoms that relied on short-lived victories, Rome developed something far more powerful: discipline, organization, and an ability to learn from its mistakes. Every defeat became a lesson. Every victory made the Republic stronger. As Rome grew, so did its ambitions. Its soldiers became some of the best trained fighters of the ancient world. Roman legions were famous not only for their courage, but for their discipline and engineering skills. They built roads, bridges, forts, and camps wherever they marched, allowing armies to move faster than almost any enemy they faced. But Rome's greatest strength was never its military alone. It was its ability to build. Roads connected distant provinces. Aqueducts carried fresh water to growing cities. Harbors linked trade routes across the Mediterranean. Roman law created order in territories filled with different cultures, languages, and traditions. Instead of destroying every society it conquered, Rome often absorbed the best parts of them. Greek knowledge, Egyptian grain, Spanish silver, and countless local traditions became part of a civilization unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. As the centuries passed, Rome transformed from a republic into a vast empire. Its influence spread across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. The Mediterranean Sea became so completely dominated by Roman ships that many simply called it our sea, a reflection of how secure Roman control had become. For ordinary citizens, life inside the empire offered opportunities that were almost unimaginable elsewhere. Trade flourished, cities expanded, architecture reached extraordinary heights. Massive amphitheaters, temples, aqueducts, and public baths became symbols of Roman prosperity. Millions of people lived under the protection of Roman law, while merchants transported goods across thousands of miles without crossing a single foreign border. It seemed as though Rome had solved the greatest challenge any civilization could face. It had built an empire so vast, so wealthy, and so well organized that many believed it could never fall. But that belief would become one of history's greatest illusions, because while Rome appeared stronger than ever, the first cracks had already begun to form beneath its foundations. Chapter 2. The Empire at its greatest. By the 2nd century AD, Rome had become something the ancient world had never seen before. It was no longer just a powerful kingdom or a successful republic. It was the center of an empire that stretched across 3 continents. Its borders reached from Britain in the north to the deserts of North Africa in the south. In the east, Roman influence extended deep into the Middle East, while in the west, it reached the Atlantic Ocean. Nearly every shore of the Mediterranean belonged to Rome. For this reason, the Romans proudly called it Mare Nostrum, our sea. Ships sailed across its waters every day, carrying grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul, olive oil from Hispania, marble from Greece, spices from Arabia, and luxury goods from lands even farther east. Trade connected millions of people, and with it came prosperity, unlike anything the empire had experienced before. Rome itself became one of the largest cities on earth. Its population may have exceeded 1 million people, a staggering number for the ancient world. The streets were crowded with merchants, craftsmen, senators, soldiers, travelers, and slaves from every corner of the empire. Different languages could be heard in the same marketplace, yet Roman law and Roman authority united them all. The city never truly slept. Fresh water flowed through enormous aqueducts that stretched for miles across valleys and hills. Public baths welcomed thousands of visitors each day. Massive amphitheaters hosted games and spectacles that attracted crowds from across the empire. The Colosseum stood as a symbol of Roman engineering and confidence, reminding every visitor of the empire's incredible power. But impressive buildings were only part of the story. Rome's true strength lay in its organization. More than 400,000 kilometers of roads connected distant provinces, allowing armies, officials, merchants, and messages to move with remarkable speed. Some of these roads were built so well that parts of them still exist today. The Roman legions remained the backbone of the empire. Highly disciplined and professionally trained, they defended the frontiers, built bridges and forts, and responded quickly to threats wherever they appeared. Their reputation alone discouraged many enemies from attacking. For nearly 2 centuries, much of the empire enjoyed a period historians now call the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Although conflicts still occurred, most citizens experienced an era of relative stability, economic growth, and cultural development. Cities expanded, literacy increased, trade flourished, and Roman influence spread far beyond its borders. To many people, it felt as though this prosperity would never end. Generation after generation grew up believing that Rome was too rich, too organized, and too powerful to collapse. After all, what force on earth could challenge an empire that ruled tens of millions of people? Who could threaten armies that had conquered nearly every rival they had faced? Who could destroy a civilization that had survived for centuries? The answer, surprisingly, was not a foreign king. It was not a mighty army. And it was not a single catastrophic battle. The danger was already growing inside the empire itself. Hidden beneath the wealth, the celebrations, and the appearance of stability, Rome was slowly beginning to weaken. The cracks were almost invisible, but with every passing decade, they grew wider. Chapter 3. The First Cracks. From the outside, the Roman Empire still looked magnificent. Its roads were busy, its markets were full, its legions still guarded thousands of miles of frontier. To an ordinary citizen, life appeared almost unchanged. But beneath that image of strength, the empire was quietly changing. The first signs of decline did not come from invading armies. They came from within. As Rome expanded, it also became far more difficult to govern. An empire stretching across 3 continents could no longer be managed as easily as it had been centuries earlier. Messages took weeks to travel. Governors often acted independently, and local problems became harder for the emperor to control. The larger Rome became, the more complicated it was to hold together. At the same time, something even more dangerous was happening in the heart of the empire. The struggle for power was becoming increasingly violent. During the early years of the empire, the transfer of power was often planned through adoption or careful succession. Strong emperors prepared capable heirs, helping to maintain stability for decades. But that system did not last. As ambitious generals gained influence, the throne became something that could be taken by force. If a commander had enough loyal soldiers behind him, he could declare himself emperor. And many did. The Roman army, once the empire's greatest protector, slowly became its most powerful political force. Soldiers no longer defended only Rome. Increasingly, they defended the ambitions of individual generals. When an emperor lost the loyalty of the army, his position became almost impossible to keep. Some were overthrown, some were betrayed, some were murdered by the very men sworn to protect them. Every assassination created uncertainty. Every civil war weakened the empire. Every new ruler inherited a government that had become less stable than before. Instead of preparing for external threats, Rome repeatedly turned its weapons against itself. Legions marched across Roman land to fight other Roman legions. Cities that had once celebrated imperial victories suddenly found themselves caught between rival armies, claiming to defend the same empire. The damage was enormous. Money that should have strengthened the borders was spent on civil wars. Experienced soldiers died fighting fellow Romans instead of defending the frontier. Entire provinces suffered from destruction caused not by foreign enemies, but by Rome itself. For ordinary people, confidence in the government slowly disappeared. Merchants worried about instability. Farmers feared another civil war. Local officials became more concerned with choosing the winning side than serving the people. Corruption spread because survival mattered more than honesty. Perhaps the greatest danger was that these problems did not appear all at once. There was no single day when Romans woke up and realized their empire was collapsing. The decline was slow, almost invisible. Each crisis was followed by a brief recovery. Each new emperor promised to restore order. Each victory created hope that the worst was over. But the foundations of the empire were becoming weaker with every passing generation. Rome still looked powerful. Its monuments still stood proudly above the city. Its banners still flew over distant provinces. Its armies still inspired fear. Yet behind that impressive image, the empire had begun consuming itself. And while Rome fought over power, another crisis was quietly growing, one that no emperor could ignore forever. The economy, the very system that kept the empire alive, was beginning to break apart.